So I'm Genese Grill. I'm an artist and writer, a translator, a community organizer, and I live in Burlington, Vermont. Well, I guess you want to know what art I make. I write essays, and I make books, and I paint in the books, and I bind the books, I make paintings. When I was 13, I went to the Art Students League in New York City. I lived just outside of New York City, and I would go on Saturdays and draw naked people, which was fun. And I had one really good friend, Shireen Patel, who was a city girl, and I meet her, and we would draw naked people, and we would share all sorts of ideas about art and books, and she was really brilliant and sophisticated, and she taught me all sorts of things. But at the same time, I was reading a lot. I grew up in a house with lots and lots of books. My mother had been a French major and a Russian studies major, and my father was an English professor and a poet. I also, from a very early age, made friends with an older scholarly literary person who really turned me on to the world of literature. And I wasn't going to go to college because I didn't want to have all my sort of sacred, beloved things like literature and art destroyed by academic scoffers and cynicism and whatnot, because I was really idealistic for a person growing up in the 1980s. And so I applied to just one college. I was 17 and I got in, and so I went. But it was very difficult for me because at the time everybody was really into being ironic and sarcastic, and all the art was very conceptual, and I wanted to make beautiful things. So I had a hard time, and I didn't have the strength of my conviction to just kind of go do what I wanted to do, because I was 17, 18, 19, 20. I almost got kicked out. But I stuck it through reading novels instead of, doing art most of the time. And then I went, when I finished, I wasn't going to be an artist anymore. And I kind of went back to literature. And then I went and studied German literature and became a scholar. And then in the meantime, I was making art. I thought at the time, when I was 17, 18, 19, that what I was doing didn't have a place in the contemporary art world, because the people who were doing things in the contemporary art world, the people that were getting attention, were doing things so different than what I cared about and that what I was doing, that I thought, forget it, I can't be a part of this conversation. But what I realized later was that I could have been, and I could have changed the conversation, because 10 years later I saw people who had been doing what I'd been doing, and they had made it through and they'd communicated. My visual art has changed over the years in that it has gotten much larger. I was doing my art and I was doing my writing in a very small, intimate scale. I was making tiny books, I was writing letters, I was doing little puppet shows with my friends in our local community, making very small things, very small scale things on the margin. And I somehow suddenly felt like I wanted to get bigger and I wanted to communicate with more people. And so I decided that I wanted to make a giant book, which is what you see here. And I also decided that I wanted to write for larger audiences. Materiality is very important to me. So I love papers and I love textures, and I like to do things that take as much trouble as possible, in a sense, and that, this book is ridiculous. I mean, how would anybody handwrite a 20-page book with a tiny paintbrush? And it's taken me about 4 years. But the point of it is that it takes time, and that I'm always engaged with the materiality and the difficulties of the materiality, the struggling. So ease is not something that I want, as frustrating as it can be not to have it. I don't want convenience. And when I write, I also handwrite a great deal. Doing that inscription helps me really understand what I'm doing, helps me really get in touch physically with the ideas. So it's all about books, little books, big books, scholarly books, books of translation, books of novels, books of essays, books.